Fairplay is the leading nonprofit organization committed to helping children thrive in an increasingly commercialized, screen obsessed culture, and the only organization dedicated to ending marketing to children. Their incredible advocacy is grounded in the overwhelming evidence that child targeted marketing and the excessive screen time it encourages undermines kids' healthy development. Let kids be kids. Joining us today is David Monahan, campaign director at Fairplay. David plans and implements Fairplay's campaigns and builds partnerships with advocacy groups and policymakers. David was an assistant attorney general in the Consumer Protection Division of the Massachusetts Office of the Attorney General for 15 years, including 6 years as deputy division chief. He sits on the board of directors at Northeast Legal Aid, which serves low income and elderly individuals and families in and around Lawrence, Lowell, and Lynn. And I'm a Lynn, Massachusetts. David says he is grounded by the time he spends with his beautiful family. The website is fairplay4kids.org, and we are going to welcome David Monahan today to the Warriors.
Thank you, Lynn. I feel welcomed and I appreciate being here.
Oh, I am thrilled because of the great work that is being done by Fairplay and being a leader in this entire landscape and having the chance to talk with you as campaign director, because our goal is to educate the public, to help the public, to have them come on board and feel secure in knowing the information we provide is something they can jump on board with, power in numbers, and help keeping kids safe. So first, I'm going to say it again to you. It is an incredible honor. I'm glad you're here today. It is really very critical, David, and crucial. I find with the work we do as the Warriors, being the ultimate cheerleaders for keeping everyone safe, that people really understand what is going on, that they don't, because they're so overwhelmed, just close that door and forget about things. We cannot do that. So I want to jump right in. We believe at the Warriors, everybody can and must do something in 2024. Let's start with, I'm going to jump in with something like this. Who is David Monahan? Now, you can tell us anything you want. It can be when you were a child. I'm leaving that open because something people always say to me, like, Lynn, tell us about yourself. So I'm just leaving it open. Anything you want to share with us. That's appropriate.
I appreciate it. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, originally. Grew up there, and I'm proud to say I'm from Brooklyn, but I've lived for the second half of my life very happily in Massachusetts. And you mentioned my family, which means so much to me. And what can I say? I'm a baseball fan. I'm a music fan. And I've done a lot of work in my career that has really inspired me. And I feel really privileged to have done work that has made a difference. And that's why it's great to talk with you, because you're trying to make a difference.
Well, thank you. But I couldn't do my job without Fairplay, because, I use all the studies and the resources and the take actions to fuel our work here at the Warriors. But I do want to ask you, if you don't mind sharing, can you tell us a little bit about, because I find it fascinating, your career as Assistant Attorney General in the Consumer Protection Division in the Massachusetts Office of the Attorney General, because I find that so well suited to go on to Fairplay, but I'll leave that up to you to describe how this all happened.
Sure, I appreciate your asking. So I was very fortunate to work at the Massachusetts AG's office with a great team of lawyers and paralegals and other staff who were really dedicated to helping vulnerable consumers. And that means I wore a lot of different hats. So for a number of years, I was the deputy chief in that Consumer Protection Division. And so I got to play a big role in just educating the public about how to avoid scams and be a smart consumer. And can't tell you how many times I repeated the old adage, if a deal sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And that's something that we can all say to ourselves every day and say to the seniors in our life and just to everyone that we can. But I also got to litigate cases there to try to address unfair and deceptive acts and practices, and everything from mortgage scams to household good mover scams, home improvement contractor scams. There's no shortage of ways that vulnerable people can be taken advantage of. And we did good work there. I worked under a couple of different attorneys general, including most recently Maura Healey, who's now the governor of Massachusetts. But I was really privileged to do that work. And about 9 years ago, when I decided I wanted to do something different, I felt really excited when I heard about this organization, and I've been at Fairplay for the last 9 years. And I did not know a lot about nonprofit advocacy when I started, did not know a lot about child development or how business practices impact young people. But I kind of learned as quickly as I could, and I feel equally as excited about this job because every day we're kind of on the front lines on some really important issues. And when we're talking about kids, we're saying the way that they're targeted with marketing and the way that they're seeing all these voices, every day in social media that are influencing them. So when kids are young and vulnerable, and instead of the most important influences on them being their parents or their siblings or their teachers or even a clergy person, if that's, if it's a family of faith, if the most important influence are influencers who are telling you this is the shampoo you need to buy, or this is the soft drink you should drink, you have to be beautiful, you need to lose weight. Um, Kids are seen as targets by marketers and online platforms. And the work that Fairplay does is grounded in the belief that kids' well-being is too important. The future of our communities depends upon it, right? And the future of our families. So we want kids to be able to grow up in a healthy environment, not unduly influenced by these platforms and these marketers. And as we'll probably, hopefully talk about in a few minutes, there are some really serious harms lurking right now on social media and in gaming platforms. And fortunately, Fairplay, along with a lot of other orgs and individuals, other champions, other warriors that I'm sure you have your eye on, we've been able to make a difference in raising awareness among families, among policymakers, among lawmakers, that we need help. You can't rely upon parents to do everything and be the gatekeepers. We need some rules in place to protect young people online.
You open up a can of worms. Okay, let me calm down. I have 100 questions for you now.
Okay.
But first of all, let's make clear about Fairplay. What is, and you touched upon it, what is the mission and vision? How would you describe that in a sentence or two?
Well, I think you described a couple of sentences about our mission. We want young people to be able to grow up in this increasingly screen obsessed culture. We want them to be able to grow up in environments that are healthy for them. So we don't take any corporate money for the work that we do. All of the evidence we do is based upon all the work that we do is based upon evidence, what experts are saying about child development, and we're just trying to, especially in the last few years, we're trying to create a culture online where young people are able to be safe, because young people, whether it's kids or teens, they do need these online platforms to engage, whether it's with the school, engage academically, to socialize with their friends. This is today's schoolyard, right? This is where kids are getting along, or today's lunchroom. But they need safe spaces to be able to do that.
Right. We need guardrails. Listen, it is, we know it's out there, the landscape. We'll get into that a little bit. It is a digital world. That's what we live in, an online world. I don't want to give it back. I'm sure, David, you don't want to give it back. I'm in the middle of New York City. You're where you are. We can connect. It's a wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm.
We can talk across the globe, but we do have to have some guardrails. So I want to jump into describe your role as we're going to get into some of the campaigns that are so, especially back to school time, are so urgent to start getting on everybody's agendas, start thinking about and act. What is your job as campaign director? Like, how do you go about deciding which campaign? Do people send you things? Do you seek it out? Do you see the need? Do you see a hole, a void somewhere? Describe to us your job.
Well, a few years ago, it kind of shifted a little bit, right? So there was a time where we were focusing on schools, especially where there was marketing in schools, and we called kids a captive audience in school, or they wanted advertising on school buses. We were concerned with junk food marketing, which is really important, and sadly, it's still an issue. But as kids were increasingly in online platforms, and certainly with the development of the smartphone, we saw that the most important thing that we could do was to be raising awareness about the way kids' well-being is being impacted online and the way kids are being endangered. So as campaign director, I work with our staff on determining what are kind of the worst practices that we need to shine a light on. What are ways that we can educate the public? What are ways that we can reach out to regulators and policymakers? You know, Fairplay has filed FTC complaints in recent years where we brought to the regulators' attention the fact that YouTube was not enforcing their policies under the Children's Online Privacy and Protection Act, and making sure that kids under 13 were on the platform. They said, oh, believe it or not, they said YouTube's not a platform for kids; it's for 13 and up. So we don't really have to comply with this law. So we had notified the FTC and encouraged them and kind of put together some of the evidence. So we brought some cases at the FTC. We've reached out to attorneys general, and we're especially working in Congress, where in recent years we've played a big role in promoting the Kids Online Safety Act, or KOSA, and we've helped to uplift the voices of parents. We
Yes.
work with a group called Parents SOS, which hopefully we'll talk a little bit about, and we've helped to bring them straight to the Hill to tell lawmakers, this is why the problem is urgent. We need some guardrails in place, as you say. And so a lot of our work these days is focused on encouraging Congress to help parents and to put some guardrails in place. And along with the partners we work with, we've had some success.
Okay, I want to go back. I want to get into, COSA. Well, I guess it's now called KOSPA, but we'll get into that. Just
Mhm.
explain a few of the, you mentioned a good point, and it sounds actually very simple, but the number one thing is really raising awareness about the issues. Like that's where it starts for the public, bringing it to their attention. And then the way I see it, we at the Warriors, it's twofold. We have to grassroots in the communities, in the homes, get everybody involved, right? Education,
Mhm.
keep that going, make them a part of all of this. And then also, as you pointed out, the legislation, whether at the state and the federal level, we must have laws and act it. Um, Tell us about some of the harms. Let's review a few of the harms, because when I talk about things, people, and I'm in the middle of New York City, David, and I literally sometimes clutch their chest and they're like, I don't know this is going on my child's phone. Now, that being said, there's something called parental autonomy. We can only suggest, when you buy your child a phone, that's up to you, right? Delay is the way. We like that, but it's up to a parent to decide when they give their children these devices. We know kids 9 to 17 have access to 4 different devices, phones and gaming and Chromebooks and laptops. And
Mhm.
but describe some of the harms, because there are numerous harms that occur on a daily basis and seem to be escalating. So what do you have to say about all of this?
Sure. First, a quick point on that parental autonomy piece. Remember when, back in the 50s and 60s, when we started to realize exactly how dangerous cigarettes were, we didn't decide that the answer was, you know what, parents, you need to keep those cigarettes away from your kids. That's the bottom line. We're going to keep advertising and keep saying that this cigarette has a filter, so you won't get sore throats and all. Like, no, we need laws that say you cannot advertise cigarettes to kids because they're going to die, right? So fast forward to today, and parental autonomy plays a big role, but we've got to have those guardrails in place. We need to have an assist for parents. Parents can be having the conversations in the house and decide, help to educate the kids
Yes.
about the impacts and help to come up with practices that are a good fit for that family. But yeah, they need an assist. And to talk about some of the harms, I appreciate your asking. I kind of see those as twofold. So one of them are just the basic, like, wow, how much time are kids spending nowadays staring at screens. They're spending a ton of time in schools. They're spending a ton of time on their own. One statistic says that teens are averaging more than 7 hours a day on digital media, not including the school time, right? So there are so many manipulative practices that are luring kids. You and I know we might decide, oh, I just want to check the weather on my phone. But then, 45 minutes later, we're finally logging off because they said, oh, you might want to see this ad, or I know you're interested in this. So with kids, they're even more vulnerable to it. So important aspects of kids' development are being displaced by them staring at gaming platforms and looking at social media because there's so much manipulation on there, like counts and follower counts, telling them you've got to be popular, you've got to have people, like your Instagram posts, buzzing constantly to say check your feed, and then all of this targeted content. So it's making kids spend an inordinate amount of time online. It's kind of removing parents from the equation, and that's displacing activities that are just vital to kids' development. Just time to be creative, time to look and talk to people face to face, right, and learn how to socialize. So many other things, and there's this related tension in the family, and I'll get to the like really grave harms in a minute. But one more thing about this level, there's a tension in the family. Like the majority of households with kids in this country are having a tug of war because the kids are using the devices a lot, and the parents are saying this can't be good. Like I don't think you're doing your homework. I'm not connecting with you because your head is buried. There's a lot of tension going on. So that's a problem for everyone. And then, as you mentioned, there are these really serious harms. There's harmful content that kids are being exposed to. They're being exposed to sexual predators. They're in this room with strangers, right? So they're not physically in the room with strangers, but they're in this room with strangers who can contact them and who can ask to meet them. So they're exposed to predators. They're exposed to content that promotes eating disorders, because this is what the marketers are doing. If you do some searches and it seems like maybe you're interested in going on a diet or you're interested in body image, they literally start feeding you content that promotes eating disorders.
Right.
You're being exposed to drug dealers. They're being exposed to cyberbullying and dangerous viral challenges that glorify swallowing Tide Pods or things like that. And then it's really harmful to young people's mental health. And sadly, we work with some parents whose families have been impacted, and suicide after cyberbullying is a huge problem these days. So those are some of the really serious harms that I think we've helped to convince members of Congress, like, we need protections like yesterday, because if one more kid is harmed because of inaction of Congress, that's really inexcusable.
It is just so overwhelming. We work with a lot of parents, behind the scenes. And here in New York, we've always had, I mean, you being from Brooklyn, this, we've always had, to some extent, we heard about subway surfing, right? Like,
Right.
but now, because there are these viral challenges put out, we have so many increased cases of kids not only being harmed, killed lately, because they're being encouraged, good kids, straight A students recently, two of them, that just took a dare from their friends, at the last minute, and ended up dead. And there's nothing more impactful than parents. It is so horrible, bringing them to Congress, their stories. We support them so much that they're brave like this to share this horrific occurrence in their family. That brings me to KOSA, Kids Online Safety Act. That is it true that first piece of child safety legislation, David, since 1998?
That is true.
That's
And
shocking.
yeah, it is. Now, smartphones obviously didn't exist in 1998. The good news is that the bill has passed in this 91-3, right? Now, in this day and age, what kind of legislation passes 91-3? And it's because both sides of the aisle understand how urgent this problem is. And I'll mention these advocates we've worked with. There's a group called Parents for Safe Online Spaces.
Yes.
It's the joint project of Fairplay and the David's Legacy Foundation. So David's Legacy Foundation was created by Maureen Molak of San Antonio, Texas. She tragically lost her son, David, in 2016. He was 16 years old, and he was an Eagle Scout and, just an amazing young man. And he was relentlessly cyberbullied for months, and he took his own life. And so these groups help to create Parents for Safe Online Spaces, and there are parents that have been impacted by some of these other harms I mentioned, and they have made a tremendous difference in Washington. And there was a big swing in January of this year when there was a Senate hearing, which you may recall, and your listeners, your viewers may recall, when Mark Zuckerberg was essentially called on the carpet and asked by one of the senators, these parents are in the room. They're here now. And many members of Parents SOS were there holding the pictures of the young people they lost. And one of the senators said, they're here. Do you want to apologize? And Mark Zuckerberg turned and he gave this kind of uncomfortable apology. And it was front page news the next day. But what was really incredible, and talk about your warriors, Lynn, every one of these parents, when the microphone was put in front of them, whether it was in the hallway after that hearing or the next day on national television, and they were asked, well, what did you think about this apology? Like, how do you feel? They turned it to what matters. And they said, this is why we need to pass the Kids Online Safety Act. And that really kind of put wind in the sails of that law. And so, like I said, passed overwhelmingly. Now it's before the House. And, this bill would create a much safer internet for young people, because it would create a duty of care that they can't just worry about profits. They need to think about the way their manipulative tactics are keeping kids online, the way it's exposing them to harm. Right now it's in the House, and I believe there are 44 co-sponsors as of today. It was only proposed in April, so it hasn't had the time to kind of build up the bigger support. But the House is in recess in August, and we've told our supporters that's a great time for you to pick up the phone or write an email to your member of Congress and say, I'd love to come visit you, whether it's down the street or some of them are driving 100 miles to go to that home district in August, and say, want to urge you to support this bill. But they'll be back in session in September, and we and our partners are going to be encouraging at that time, support this bill, and let's get it across the finish line.
And you point out it's an excellent time. First of all, David, all the information will be in the body of this video. So our warriors, everybody in the public, can take their time, read, very easily click on a link and know how to find out who represents them and just add their name, because Fairplay has done all the work. You just have to add your name and hit the send button, and it's all done for you. It is so urgent that we don't lose momentum. And I think 44 is a good number considering the time of year. And everybody's thinking summer, they're leaving the offices, they'll be back. It is a great time to get organized. And we urge everybody that you really do have, I'll say, duty of care as a parent, as a family member, as a caretaker. You may not be a parent, but you may be a grandparent. You're an aunt or an uncle. We all have to, I like to think of it as a big wheel with a lot of spokes. It's all connected. And we all have to get on board with all of this. I want to ask you about, I want to point out, though, all of this work being done is bipartisan. It really belongs to no political parties. It is human rights. It is, abuses that we're addressing and keeping kids, keeping families safe and informed. And that's the way I like to always preface it, because that's what I like to say, David. I like to just throw that in there. And I will throw in, as I digress, that, I'm represented by Chuck Schumer. And poor man was getting messages 10 times a day from me. But, we do what we have to do.
Well, you know what? I think your message has made a difference, because I was in the room with him a couple of weeks ago at a press conference, and behind him were these parents who have been, fierce advocates. They've turned their pain into really inspiring advocacy. But he gets it. You could see at that podium that he understands. And he said, as a grandparent, how could I not want to make a difference? And the other side of the aisle, Senator Blackburn is one of the authors of the bill, along with Senator Blumenthal. And when I say there are 44 co-sponsors in the House, I'm pretty sure it's 22 Democrats and 22 Republicans. So we hope to see those, both sides of the aisle continue to increase their support of this bill.
I mean, absolutely. So far, we're going to salute them, but we're going to push them harder to take bigger steps. But they're doing well so far for today. Well, I'll give everybody that. Now,
we
let's
salute you, but if you don't do your job, we're going to try to kick you in the butt and make you do it.
See, now you said it. See, I'm going to come down and get them.
Gentle kick in the butt.
Well, warriors, we're loveful, peaceful warriors. We're just very aggressive appropriately. I'll put it that way, kind of thing. But it's funny because when I said to just parents, listen, because anywhere I go, I would carry around on my phone, carry a clipboard, believe it or not, and say, you can sign on to this, or here's more information. They'd be like, I don't know about this. So that is why it's so terrific, the work Fairplay does. You've done it all for us to make it very easy. I want to get into back to school time. Now here in New York, I don't know where you are. We start not until after Labor Day, but a lot of schools are starting even next week. And you have a wonderful toolkit that I can't promote, I don't even know what to say about it because I'm using it. I'm giving it to people, a lot of educators. It is a new partnership with the Phone Free Schools movement. Explain what this means and why it is so important that we do have phone-free classrooms or schools, this whole issue.
Absolutely. So Fairplay, as you say, has partnered with the Phone Free Schools movement, which is a nonprofit organization. And we've produced this free toolkit, which is available to anyone for administrators. We're going to be producing another toolkit in the fall for people who want to be ambassadors. And we're doing other work to kind of educate people and influence policymakers. But, I think it might be helpful to kind of put it in context. I think back to when I was in the 7th grade, and in my science class with Mrs. Haber, I will never forget, I was listening to a ball game one day on my red transistor radio, and I had one of the old-fashioned earplugs. I thought I was really clever. I had the earplug going up through my shirt, coming out the collar, and I had it in my ear. And this was the end of September. It was a really important ball game in the pennant race. And Mrs. Haber, who was a real spark plug and really inspired us about science, she saw this. Of course she saw it. And she just walked right over and she stood over me. And she wasn't more than about 5 foot tall, but she towered over me as I was sitting in my chair. And she didn't say a word. She just put her hand out. And she looked at me like, you got to be kidding me. You're going to sit in my science class and listen to the radio? And she just put her hand out. And I handed the radio to her. And she walked away. And I kind of feebly said, like, will I get my radio back? And she just ignored me. And I don't think I got it back until New Year's. But imagine today, all these kids with their heads buried in their phones, looking in their bag. If there's a rule like, don't have your phone out. So they're looking in their bag. They're checking their social media feeds, going to the bathroom if they need to do that. Teachers are crying out for help. They're saying this is a huge distraction. It's impacting the way kids are doing academically. It's impacting the way they're interacting socially. And that's a big part of school, right? I mean, we all learned that during COVID. Trying to convey the lessons is one thing, but part of why kids are in school is to learn to get along with other kids and to be sociable and kind of spread their wings and fly. Yeah. And if kids are all sitting in the lunchroom ignoring each other because they're looking at their phones, that doesn't do the trick. So the good news is, I think the pendulum is swinging. So many parents and teachers and principals are saying, how the heck did we get here? Who wanted this? This is not going to work. And so we're seeing people crying for help and for a change. And we're seeing different jurisdictions. I know in Ohio, they passed a bill recently that said they're directing every school to have, or every district to have, a policy in place by July of 2025. And they're encouraging, I guess the DOE in Ohio is encouraging them to be phone free. In Virginia, Governor Youngkin is issued an executive order. I want schools to go phone free. And so I think the DOE has to issue guidance. the movement is there.
Yes.
And what we've done is created a toolkit, which is free. And basically, this will tell, so this one is directed at administrators. So if you are a principal or a school district leader and you want to either try to implement phone-free schools or see if your community is ready for it, we give folks all the tools you need. And we've got like some handy dandy graphics since we're trying to be a little bit unplugged. I'm not going to share my screen or anything, but you can see these great graphics that show you things like 97% of students are using phones during school. 83% of teachers support an all-day phone-free policy. So what our toolkit will do is tell administrators, how to do it. You're not just going to walk in one day and say announcement, or call an assembly. I'm deciding no more phones. That's the end. You're going to have some really angry people. The parents will be saying, what the heck is this about? The kids will be bristling about it. But there are ways to go about it to kind of gauge the sentiment, gauge the support, survey people, think about the different ways you can implement phone-free schools, think about the evidence you need to tell your families, this is why we're thinking of doing it, and going ahead to do it. So this toolkit, we encourage people to check it out. And if you are not an administrator, but you're, a parent who cares, you can pick up this toolkit too, and you could print it and bring it to your principal. If I were you, I'd probably bring a plate of brownies or something to sweeten the deal as you're bringing it to them. But this can be useful to you too. And then the good news is in October, we're issuing another toolkit that will be designed for ambassadors. So if you are a parent and you want the tools just for you, we'll have that resource for you in the fall.
That's the best, to have like family member ambassadors, to get other parents on board, to go with the proof that Fairplay provides and say, here, as a group, we want to start this. And our New York Governor Kathy Hochul has gone full in on this. She wants no phones in the schools. They're working on a plan now how that might work, whether the kids check them in the morning and put them in these pouches, or they have cubbies somewhere. And we know there are various studies, David, that tell us kids do better where it's already implemented when they're not using the phones during the day. They're not isolated. They're not at the cafeteria table all, well, look, we've even seen it as adults. You go to a restaurant, everybody's on the phones, not talking. It's a wonderful thing. And if I'm just going to throw in, if anything good came out of the COVID period, is that a lot of people, it raised awareness about what's happening online with children, since they were at home using, the Chromebooks and things like that. And they started really sitting up, taking notice, wanting to do more. And you are completely correct, because we preach, and I use the word preach here, the pendulum is swinging back ever so slightly, but I feel it not even slightly. It is going, and it's going to happen. I feel very encouraged about all of this. And I want our warriors to feel very encouraged. There is help out there. I want to ask you before we finish up, how as a dad, do you want to share with that at all, how you handle this in your house? You may not want to share it, but it's hard. My kids, my 3 children are all in their 30s. So I just missed all of this because they're older. But I always feel like 30 and under, the parents sure have their jobs cut out for them in this digital world. How do you do it?
I'm happy to share. My kids are 2 different ages, so we're in 2 different places. My son is 5, and so with him, we've made the choice that we don't want him staring at a tablet or anything like that. I think it gets tricky with him because, there are some wonderful shows on PBS Kids, and yet they have these commercials where they say, download the app, because you can carry the show when you're going to the soccer game. And, I'm scratching my head like, PBS, really? I don't get it. Why do you need to say that? And so my son will ask, can't we get the app? And my wife and I say, no, that's just not for us. You're not going to look at a tablet while we're driving. It's just not what we choose to do, and that kind of thing. So the bigger questions are down the road with him. For my daughter, who's 12, you kind of see what's probably common in a lot of families. Like, she gets it. She understands the harms. She, at certain points, will understand how superficial it is to think, oh, I need to go on there and make somebody think I'm popular. Why would I want to do that? And my time is better spent doing other things. But then the next day you'll have something that indicates that they're, kind of reeling her back in, and she does want to be popular, and she does want to look at her screen, and she certainly enjoys all those supposedly funny videos on YouTube. So I think the answer for us is talking about it. This is what we encourage families to do. Talk about the harms, educate your kids about them. Sometimes you can motivate a child if they understand, like, wait a minute, they're collecting my personal data. And the reason I saw that ad is because they're targeting me. They know that I like that show or whatever it is. Sometimes you can kind of get their back up a little bit to be a little bit resistant, but certainly have the conversations about why you need to be careful. Make sure that they know, hey, come to your parents if you have questions about what anyone is reaching out about, and try to reach something that works for your family.
Yes. And I'm glad you pointed out open and honest communication.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes parents will say to me, well, I don't want to open that can of worms. I don't want to lead them. I'm like, they're already there because they're learning things online. They're learning from their peers. So you be that warrior that teaches them. And certainly, as you pointed out, any creep, whatever, the child needs to be able to just come to the parent, because that is not okay. We have to make sure our kids know, come to us. That is not okay. It's like opening. We have to remind everybody, you give out these devices to your children. It's like opening up your front door and welcoming the world in. And I don't think, David, most people would do it. I think most people lock their front door at nighttime when they go to bed. And we have to think of an analogy like that to make it sink in with people,
Yeah,
the dangers that are online, as well as all of the great stuff that we're not giving up. Finish us up with, how
sure.
can the public, we went over a couple of things, but I want you to reinforce it. How can the public help you at Fairplay, and some final words for our warriors?
Thank you for the opportunity to do that. So, one final word is just remember, parents, as we're saying that you have a role, we're also not pointing the finger at you, and we're not trying to
Oh,
put the
yeah.
burden on you. And even if you have a law degree, that doesn't mean you can understand those privacy policies that they're trying to lure your kid into sharing all their data. We need Congress to act, and we need state regulators to act to give you a hand. But the way I would encourage people to reach out, you can check out Fairplay's website. We also house the Screen Time Action Network with a lot
Yes.
of resources for families and educators and mental health professionals about the impacts of screen time. Our partners at the Phone Free Schools Movement, who authored this toolkit with us, they have some great resources. And as you really kindly pointed out, if people want to encourage their representatives to support COSA, you'll find information on our website about how to do that. And if you want our free toolkit, you'll find it on our website. And then in the fall, there'll be that new resource, as I mentioned, just for ambassadors to get involved on trying to encourage phone-free schools.
Yeah, I'm excited about that one. We will be mass giving that out to everybody, every warrior across the United States. I can assure you that, David. Well, I want to point out that fairplayforkids.org is the website. We will have all of these links. Fear not, David. I am going to load it up. Nobody will be able to escape us. Um,
Perfect.
and and how they can really help. It's just so easy, as I said, like with one click to help with things. David Monahan, I really want to thank you for taking the time today, for your dedication and commitment to kids and families and keeping everybody safe. It's really tremendous. And the warriors, we are honored, to advocate along with Fair Play, promote all you do. And we are here in every way possible to promote Fair Play and the great work you do. There's so much more we need to speak about because things are changing on a daily basis. Promise me we will speak again soon. And I just want to thank you again. I can't say it enough for all you are doing and Fair Play is doing. You're warriors.
You're so kind. I really appreciate that. I appreciate the great work that you're doing,
Thank you.
elevating voices of other warriors. And so thank you for the kind words. And I promise I'll look forward to talking with you again.
Brooklyn in the house, everybody. David Monahan. We will speak again soon. Take care.
Thank you.